My name is Hannah, and this is my beauty budget. Hey y'all, so I'm filming a tag today. My friend Zane created a YouTube tag, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, I'm doing it. I don't do very many tag videos. I only do them when I feel inspired, which is probably pretty standard, but there are a lot that come out that I don't know, I don't feel like answering the questions, or maybe I feel like my answers to the questions wouldn't make a good video. In any case, I mostly do what I want on my channel, as we know, and this is a tag that I really do want to do. So I'm super excited that Zane created it, and I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about Zane. I've been meaning to mention her for a while here, and this is the perfect opportunity. Zane is like my YouTube little sister. I can't lay claim to her brilliance in any way because she is 100% responsible for her brilliance, but I've known her on the internet since before she started her channel, and we talked about her starting her channel before she started it. And so I feel like a proud mama or a proud older sister, not just because she went ahead and started her channel, but because she's so lovely at it. She's really good at being on YouTube. She makes beautiful videos. She's also very conscientious about her consumerism, and that's kind of the thrust of her channel. Her channel is about curation of beauty products. And so if you are someone who's drawn to my channel because of the way that I talk about beauty and the fact that I talk about ownership of products and the acquisition of products in a way that's slightly off the beaten path in terms of how it's usually discussed on YouTube, then you will really love Zane. She's definitely someone that I recommend watching if you're trying to curate your own subscription feed to be mostly beauty gurus or people on YouTube who make content that is in this vein or is in that vein. All right, I've been blabbering on for too long. I'm gonna do this tag. Let's go ahead and get into the meat of the video. Okay, question 1. Do you prefer buying single shadows or palettes? At this point, I haven't purchased eyeshadow in a year and 4 months. Longer actually, because I don't remember when my last purchase of eyeshadow happened in the year before my no-buy year. But I know I didn't buy any eyeshadow during my no-buy year, and I haven't bought any eyeshadow this year yet. When Zane asks, do you prefer buying single shadows or palettes? It's kind of hard for me to answer that question concretely because I don't prefer buying any eyeshadow right now. However, my temptations since my no-buy year ended have all been single eyeshadows. And I think it's just because I feel like I have so much eyeshadow that it doesn't make sense to add a whole palette in. What I want are specific formulas, specific touches, little cherries on top on my eyeshadow collection, and that's what single eyeshadows represent. Question 2, when did you start buying single shadows and what got you into them? YouTube got me into them, and I started buying them right around the time that I started getting serious about owning more makeup and experimenting with makeup, which was right around the time that I started watching YouTube like a mad woman, which was right after the 2016 election, when I needed something to bury my mind in. It was like the only thing I could stand to consume in those what were weeks, but what turned into months after the election. And then what started happening, a lot of you guys know this part of my story, is that my collection started growing and growing and growing. But it was during that time I started learning about eyeshadow. I had known some and I had some, but I started really learning. I would like get into one beauty guru and then go back and watch a whole bunch of his or her old videos. And so I was kind of plumbing the archives of YouTube from maybe 2014 and 13 up through to the present at that time, which was 2016. And all anyone was talking about were Makeup Geek singles. And then ColourPop singles had kind of just hit the market or were just starting to come out. And everyone was using like MAC singles and Makeup Geek singles and then ColourPop singles. So it seemed to me when I first started getting into it that singles were it. Like singles were the way to go. I feel like palettes have really risen since then, and people aren't really doing like whole looks and tutorials with singles anymore. But for me, it was a serious part of my initial immersion into the world of YouTube. But I didn't buy any Makeup Geek singles for some reason. I just never placed an order from Makeup Geek. This is kind of bleeding into the third question, which is what are your favorite brands and formulas of single shadows? So I never ended up placing an order from Makeup Geek. I never bought any Makeup Geek shadows. I did purchase a few from Makeup Forever just because they drew my eye in Sephora and I felt like that was the thing to do. I didn't really understand at the time that it wasn't a very good financial investment for someone who's just starting out to buy like one huge Makeup Forever pan of like red and one huge Makeup Forever pan of purple instead of spending the same amount of money on a palette that had more diversity. I just didn't really know what I was doing. I was just like, ooh, pretty, swatchy, buy-y. So I ended up with this random assortment. But it was ColourPop, that was where I really first started going at it with like making a collection and like getting single shadows that I used consistently and trying to cherry pick the colors that I was at that time kind of learning that I wanted to use. And to get more fully into answering the third question, ColourPop mattes are my favorite. That's my favorite matte formula. I just feel like I always know what I'm gonna get with them. Like I look in the pan and I know exactly how they're gonna apply to my eyes. I can control them. I can buff them out the right amount. I can blend them the right amount, but they hold their own when they're blended. I just feel, maybe it's because I sort of raised myself up on them, but I just feel like ColourPop mattes are a known entity for me. They are like an extension of my own fingers. Doesn't make any sense. They always work the way that I want them to work. And a lot of my singles, a lot of my ColourPop singles are palettes that I depotted. So when I was initially trying to collect a bunch of singles and I was really getting into singles, which was kind of towards the end actually of 2017, it was over the course of 2017 that my makeup collection exploded. I didn't really get super into singles until the end of that year. So actually I should amend my answer to question two. The actual answer is that I started kind of getting into them when I got into YouTube, but then it was at the very end, I'm now remembering, of 2017 that I started buying singles from ColourPop and I started collecting them. I just got a taste for it and then my no buy year started. So I was cut off at the pass a little bit. Who knows what would have happened if my no buy year hadn't started. But a bunch of the singles that I ended up with going into my no buy year are from ColourPop palettes that I depotted because I would rather have them as singles than as palettes. The color stories weren't really that inspiring. I really wanted to be able to mix and match. And I also don't particularly like the packaging of ColourPop palettes. I don't like that cheap packaging. I like to have nice things because I'm bougie. Okay, I said it. So I was like, I'll buy these cheap palettes with these amazing formulas that I love and all these great colors, but then I'll depot them and put them in my own lovely classy thing and you know, move them around as if they're fancier than they actually are. And that's what I did. So for mattes, ColourPop, but, and this is kind of getting into question 4. I see what you did there, Zane. They're all leading into each other. It's such an elegant tag. It's unfolding so gracefully. If I'm really, really being honest about my truly favorite single shadows, my crown jewels, which is question 4, it's JD Glow. I only own 2 eyeshadows from JD Glow. So question 4 is, if you could only pick 3 singles as the crown jewels of your collection, what would they be? I only own 2 eyeshadows from JD Glow. They're 2 Galaxy shadows, and they are 2 out of my 3 crown jewels. And I did pick a 3rd crown jewel, but to be honest, I like my 2 JD Glow shadows way the most of everything. And I'm not gonna swatch them right now because I just swatched them. I'll swatch them. It's what the tag's about. I'll swatch them. This is Unexpected from JD Glow. Unexpected. This is Good God from JD Glow. Good God. And then this is my 3rd crown jewel, which is the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette shadow that I depotted. It's called 24/7, and it's this weird, stiff, almost dry, slightly oily formula. It looks just brown, but the thing that I love about it is that when it's buffed out, it has this reddish edge. And because it's that stiff, oily formula, you can really just work it into the lids and super grunge it up. And it's got a slight sheen to it from micro glitters. So when it's worked into the eye and buffed out and buffed out and buffed out, it looks glossy. Like, it really, really looks wet on the lids. And it's one of my favorite eye looks, one of my go-to looks, and one of my most frequently worn eye looks. And I have done a whole tutorial of that look with that shadow. I will link it in the cards right now. I had a number of palettes where I wanted to keep and use fewer than half of the shadows that were in there. And it's just like, why keep a whole palette around when you only want a third of the eyeshadows in there? And recently I went through and I depotted all the palettes that I had that fell into that category, especially the ones where the color story wasn't inspiring. And now that I have them as singles, they inspire me a lot more and I get a lot more use out of them. Question 5 is, which brand singles do you want to try in the future? Nabla. Nabla. I'm dying to try Nabla's mattes and shimmers, in large part because of Zane. She really, really loves the Nabla shimmers and she does an amazing job of swatching them and showing them off on her channel. I've never touched a Nabla eyeshadow. Also, Mia of Mia's Virtual Vanity, she loves Nabla shadows too. She's like in love with Nabla, and both of them have really made me want to buy some singles. When I talked earlier about my fantasy of buying some single eyeshadows, most of those fantasies have involved just Nabla and Makeup Geek. There are some Makeup Geek eyeshadows that I've always wanted. Basically the taupey grays, like Sand Dollar, Friend Zone. There's one called Creased. There's some sort of grungy taupey grays, which I find is a little bit difficult to come across in singles, from Makeup Geek, that I think might be being discontinued because a lot of their singles are being discontinued. I've had dreams of buying those Makeup Geek singles that I've always wanted for years now. And I've had dreams of buying a bunch of eyeshadows from Nabla as well, but they just add up. Like, those Nabla shadows are $8 to $12 each, and the Makeup Geek ones are like $6 each. So I have them in my cart in Beauty Bay because that's where you can buy both of those brands together. And you know, I'll put 5 eyeshadows into my cart and it's like $60 or $70, which is just way more than I would even spend on a palette of my beauty budget. It's just like too much for me right now, especially for eyeshadow, especially because I have so much and I don't particularly want more. So I really want to try Nabla's formula, and I would really love to have those couple of Makeup Geek eyeshadows, but I'm not sure it's in the cards right now. I'm not sure it's in the cards right now. Okay, and so question 6 is, what, if any, are some of your single shadow color gaps? So in terms of single shadows, I really do feel like I'm missing some grays, gray transition, gray browns, grayish taupes, gray transitions, cool transitions, some grungy grays. I'm missing kind of, you know, that color that looks like it's a cross between brown and gray and maybe a little bit of green, like just a rich, not warm toned, sort of earth poopy brown, but dark, like a darkening shade for the outer corner, but it's got some grit to it. It's got some kind of grunginess. Sorry, you guys, some grunginess. I don't have matte colors like that. I've got a lot of great shimmers in my single shadow collection, and I've got a lot of mid chroma, like mid-tone warm colors. But in the deepening, darkening, grungifying realm, I don't really have the colors that I want. What stops me from buying them is that I have them in other palettes. The Kevin Aquan Nude Pop palette, which was sent to me a couple of months ago by a subscriber. See this color right here, this sort of grayish, almost purple, and then this kind of purple deepening one, and this iridescent mauvey purple grungy glitter shade. Those are all the colors that I was sort of thinking about buying from Nabla. And I still wish I had them in singles, but because I have them in a palette, it deters me from buying them as singles. Because I'm a person who, when I'm doing my eyeshadow, I have all of it out. I'm not like one palette at a time, or only singles today, or only this, or only that. I'm constantly dipping into what I have over here and what I have over there to make the look that I want. And I think that might be part of why I don't want my collection to grow too overwhelming, because I like knowing what I have. I like having all of my makeup in my mind palace, because I like using it all at once when I use it. If my collection of eyeshadow palettes were much bigger than it is now, I would forget stuff. I wouldn't know it was there. And what's more, the fact that there's so much of it would overwhelm me, and it would like shut down my mind palace, and I wouldn't be able to work that way. Question 7, how many single shadows do you have? I didn't prepare, I didn't count. They're all right here though, so I can count them really quickly. So she says, give an estimate. I'll count them. Hold on a second. So I tried to count, but I was extremely rushed and sloppy, and there are pretty much 100. It's probably give or take a few, but I'm guessing it's somewhere between 98 and like 102. I did pretty well. I think I accounted for almost all of them, but here they are. I'll show them to you. They're not very organized right now. The mattes and the shimmers are starting to get a little bit mixed in. For the most part, I have mattes at the bottom, shimmers at the top, and I tried to group them by color category, but as I take them out for travel and make little palettes to use for several weeks at a time and then put them all back in, I don't do a very good job of keeping them in order. I do have other magnetic palettes, but they're empty right now. I have a couple. There's one that has some cheek products in it, but all of the eyeshadows are in here right now. And I use the other magnetic palettes for curation of little temporary palettes. Zane also says that this is a good opportunity to show off the way that you store your singles, and boy, do I love the way that I store my singles. I love this palette so much. It's from Adept, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's gorgeous. It's got this kind of alligator cover. It has some very subtle branding just imprinted on the front right here. It's sturdy. It's beautiful. It's very, very hefty, and I just couldn't be more pleased. I had some trepidation about spending a chunk of my beauty budget on a big magnetic palette, and the month that I did buy this, when it arrived and I saw how amazing it was, I was utterly ecstatic. And then I was even more ecstatic that month when I researched Adept and I learned what an awesome, independent, woman-owned company they are. I've been in touch with the woman who owns Adept, and she's an absolute sweetheart. And I actually agreed to accept an affiliate code from them. It's only the second time I've ever wanted to be affiliated with a brand. The first one is Erin's Faces, that makes the brilliant sunscreen that I absolutely adore. If you're interested in a palette, I highly recommend buying it straight from their website instead of buying it from Amazon, because if you buy it straight from their website, then this small independent company gets the full amount, whereas if you buy it from Amazon, they only get part of the price of the palette that they made. Could not love Adept more, could not love this palette more, and honestly, I could not love my single shadows more. They, as a group, are one of the crown jewels of my entire makeup collection. All right, question 8, and I kind of love this question. Does your single shadow collection lean toward a certain color family? Is one color family overrepresented? If so, what is it? And here's the funny thing I have to say about this. So Zane, when I watched her video, she showed her gorgeous collection of about 60 single eyeshadows. So she opens her multifaceted palette. I looked at her singles and I was like, pink. I was like, pink, pink, pink. Like, to me, there was so much pink. It seemed to me when I looked, and I only took a glance, like here I am casting aspersions left and right, and this is just from like glancing at it when I was watching Zane's video, but I just saw this color in Zane's palette. I saw it multiple times over, and it looked to me like she had many different pans of different shades of that color pink. I'm sure that they're all different. I'm not saying, Zane, that you have like a bunch of the same color. It's just, I saw it and I was like, wow, Zane really loves that beautiful, rich, chromatic fuchsia, because that is the color that leaps out at me. Now, I think that that's partly because that's not a color that I have a lot of. Like, that's the only one that I have. It's the only pink like that that I have in this palette. So I looked at Zane's and I was like, oh my gosh, pink. And then when she asked herself this question, I was like, she's gonna say pink. She's gonna say fuchsia. And I think she said taupe or brown or something, which I'm sure is true numerically. But the reason that I'm bringing it up is because I want to know what you guys think. What do I have a lot of? Like, what does it seem like I'm drawn to that you aren't drawn to? Or is there something in here that you just wouldn't have kept as much of, or you wouldn't have collected as much of? I mean, I see a lot of bronzy, peachy taupe kind of things. Like maybe this whole little amalgam of shadows is the one that seems dominant, but then there are a lot of reds down here that I just couldn't part with. I don't know if it seems like there is something dominant here. I'm curious, I'm asking you guys, I'm totally copping out on this last question and I'm asking you guys to answer it for me. I'm fascinated by this last question for the reason that I'm fascinated by this tag overall, which is I think that single shadows are the epitome of curation of makeup. And that's why it's a perfect tag for Zane to have created, because that is what her channel is all about. When you're gathering together a group of single shadows, you're really choosing for yourself. You're picking and choosing. And when I decluttered my singles, I only kept the ones. Each individual one that I kept is one that I really love and want to actually use. So a look at someone's single shadow collection is really a look into their preferences in a way that palettes aren't, because palettes are curated by someone else. I think of myself as a bronze lover. I think of myself as kind of a grubby, earth-toned, gritty, but very, very sparkly, shiny color lover. So that means like a lot of metals, the color of metals. So golds, silvers, coppers, bronzes, those tend to be the colors that get my heart racing and the single shadows that I am really drawn to. And to be honest, right now, just glittery duochromes that's where my heart lies. And I think that that is it. Those are all of the questions. I think that I answered them all. I hope I did them justice. Zane, I hope that I did you and your tag justice. And I'm so glad that I had this opportunity to introduce Zane's channel to you guys and talk a little bit about her. She really, really is a special person, and I'm so glad that she decided to start a channel. So head over there, subscribe, tell her I sent you, give her some love. Any of you watching who has a channel of his or her own, you're tagged. I would love to see you guys doing this tag. And even if you don't have a YouTube channel, but you just have an Instagram account, I know that a lot of you guys who watch me have makeup Instagram accounts and have a large collection of single shadows. I think you could totally do this tag on Instagram by just taking a picture of all of your single shadows and then answering the questions briefly on the side. All right, that really is it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you are remembering to take extra good care of yourself right now so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world.